He is a beloved name in the sport of tennis. My guest is Alfonso Medina, head of media rights at Tennis Australia, has worked many years in the sport, but also has experience in a plethora of other sports. The conversation today is going to focus on Alfonso in a way that goes beyond just talking about his career. We're going to learn about him recently being a father and his personal life, the human side of him. So we're going to get the well-rounded panoramic view of who Alfonso Medina is. I'm Bryan Fenley with Tennis Channel and USTA and a commentator for them on the Challenger circuit. Alfonso, excited to have you on. I know we're a few weeks removed from the Australian Open, so a chance to chat and a chance to get to know you on a deep level. Really looking forward to this.
Hey, Brian. Great to see you. Thank you so much for the time and the opportunity. And yeah, looking forward to chat with you over the next little while and share some fun stories and things like that.
Absolutely. So I want to love to start here. You being a dad, that's so recent for you. We talk about coaching in tennis and all that goes into that. What part of you being a dad maybe a little bit feels like a tennis coach?
Well, yeah, we've got a 21 months old, I think he's now. Yeah, so we're coming into his second year, second birthday in a couple of months, and he is an absolute bundle of energy. He's a big boy, loves his sport, and I guess maybe I'm one of the reasons for that. And so it is a great journey, as I'm sure you know. All parents, know, and we're very lucky. He's a healthy boy and very active and just never stops. So it keeps us always on our toes. And yeah, the coaching part, I guess, is a life coaching, right? And for yourself, you're just learning every day. And when you think you've got this, and then he just runs away and does something else. But yeah, we love playing with balls. We've got tennis balls, basketball balls, football balls, rugby balls. We've got a basketball hoop about his height. So yeah, he's into all sort of ball games, ball sports.
When you see him holding a tennis ball, or maybe at your house where you live, maybe you have tennis on TV in the background and maybe he's watching, what reaction are you seeing from his face?
Yeah. With tennis, it's funny. We've got a very small fridge magnet from Roland Garros that I bought a few years ago. And so when I've got the tennis on, he goes to the fridge, grabs the magnet, and he goes sort of swinging, just hitting the ball. It's great. And when I put the basketball on, which is probably one of my most watched at home, he goes and plays with the basketball. He's got a hoop, which is different sizes, and he just loves. And doesn't go with the small ball. He goes with the big proper basketball ball, and he dunks it. So so that's the fun thing for him. So strong already.
So it sounds like he's going to have a very athletic future and might surpass his dad's athletic exploits. No pressure on him, but you yourself working in the business of sport, you talked about how your son is starting to fall in love with different sports. For you, what kind of sports fan are you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question in that because, like yourself, working in the industry, I think you start to enjoy sports in a way that is probably deeper than you did when you were probably in your teens, no? When you genuinely were enjoying it for the joy of it, for the highs and the lows, right? When your team would win or when your team would lose, you would be devastated or you would be ecstatic. And I think as you transition into, thankfully, unfortunately, be able to develop your career in the industry, you start to look at things with maybe a different filter. You still have your sport fan base on you. I'm from Tenerife in the Canary Islands in Spain, and that's where I grew up, a long way away from Australia. And my soccer and my basketball teams from there, every week I check the scores, I watch the highlights, and I try to keep engaged with that because that's my passion when I was little. But nowadays, it's a combination of following sport for the sake of entertainment, but also having a look at from a professional level, what's the content that they're offering? What's the coverage? Do they put stuff on television, on digital? Do they put it on social platforms? What content they publish? How does it look like? So I guess I don't want to say sophisticated sophisticated, but yeah, more complex than I thought I was when I was 30 years ago, in a good way, enjoying it, and I'm very appreciative of so many ways of enjoying sports nowadays.
Fascinating where you grew up, and you talked about falling in love with sports at an early age and where you were when that happened. What also, Alfonso, from your upbringing, your childhood, are things that to this day are very important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think sport generally has been a huge part of my upbringing. In my family, it was very close, our family, in the family, and then through that, somehow I've sort of channeled that into my own lifestyle priorities, the discipline, the teamwork, the hard work, the joy, the resilience, the ability to come back from lows, to deep lows. The training, the passion for things. So I generally think sport in a way is such a big part of my life, professionally and on a personal lifestyle. That all those things that I mentioned, commitment, discipline, values, and having a positive outlook in life. I think that's very important to me. Appreciating what's really important from a personal and those close to you point of view, and then what are things that are maybe important but not life or death type of things, if that makes sense.
What are you most appreciative in your life right now?
Well, yeah, great question. In that, not only we've got a little boy that is very healthy and doing great. I recently got married as well after a few years with my partner, now wife. So we did that only a few weeks ago, and it's been a great
Wow.
celebration.
Wow. So this just happened. How did you all celebrate?
Yes, we had a very lovely intimate wedding here in Australia. Had a few friends coming from overseas and some family as well, which was lovely. And we had a great week in Byron Bay, which is sort of middle of Australia on the east coast. And yeah, it was a great celebration, having achieved many of the things in the past from a personal basis and with my partner. Now we're able to actually get married, and yeah, very happy about that and looking into what's next.
Yes, Alfonso Medina is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. From one thing to celebrate to another, here is something that really caught my eye. So I was listening and reading up on an interview that you did, and you were asked about the way that you had to have, and you used this term earlier, resilience to get into the business, where there can be a challenge in getting in from the no's that we get, the rejection that comes. For some, it's hard to bear, and maybe it makes us take a pivot and go a different direction in our career and what we want to do. But even when those things were coming your way, rejection, why did you know that you still were going to make it?
Yeah. I guess maybe you don't necessarily know you're gonna make it, but you have that sort of fire in your belly. You feel strong about it. It's a passion. It's a passion you have, and yeah, early doors, so many rejections, and you just kept going. And there weren't things like LinkedIn or even internet was early stage, early 2000s. I'm giving away my age here, but early 2000s. It was all letters that you actually have to post and things like that, and you receive letters of rejection as opposed to emails, things like
Wow.
that. So, but but I just felt that I had to keep going, and I guess because in sport you keep going, right? No
Yeah.
matter what, you keep going as long as you can, and I had a very lucky breakthrough in a sports information website with through my manager at the time, Sunil. Um, he hired me as an intern on this sport cal website, and he also happened to have lived in Spain for 18 months before that, and he loved Spain, and so we connected so quickly. And I'm very thankful to say that we're very friends to this date, so many years later. So that one breakthrough after many rejections as an intern job for 3 months, that sort of that was the lucky break, so to speak.
There's luck, but there's also talent. If I were to meet you at that age, what would tip me off, Alfonso, to you showing me, even if you're not explicitly saying it, but that you're showing it that this guy's got something going on. Like he's got talent. All he needed is that chance, and he's gonna run with it and just watch him climb up the ladder there. And obviously you've done that.
Well, thank you, thank you. That's very kind of you. And yeah, that I can say that fire of being able to transmit interest in the sport, be curious. I think curiosity was not only at the beginning, but in the middle and today and tomorrow, and just be curious about what you're seeking, what you want, what's going on, right? What's going on? Why sport is such a big industry, and it's just gone. When in 20 plus years that I've been in the industry, just become such a mega part of everyone's lives and the world sort of lifestyle anyway. And so that curiosity, energy, can-do attitude from very early days. I guess it just sort of came through, and I was lucky to be part in some sort of sport business sort of reports and things like that, industry reports that we did early doors, and I guess that got me even more hooked into it. Some of the scale of the numbers, the media becoming such a relevant part, and all that kind of thing. So I think that the passion for the industry, the curiosity, and I guess the business approach to things, right? That this is a business at the end of the day. It's a great, very entertaining business that we're lucky to be a part of. But it could, I think, in my view, has a very special connection to people, unlike many other industries where they are way bigger than sport, way bigger than media, but maybe don't have that personal connection with people like sport do.
In your over 20 years in this business, obviously your ties to Spain, you're living in Australia. What part of the world, and I'm sure there are very few places in the world that you have not been, considering what you've done internationally in sports, but what part of the world are you still hoping to visit that you haven't been to before?
You know what? I mean, there are many places I haven't been to before, but even though I am from the Canary Islands and we are about 100 kilometers away from mainland Africa, I actually have never had put foot
Oh, wow.
in continental Africa, so to speak. We belong to Spain from a political and so on, um, history, but physically we actually are an African small set of islands. So there's definitely an area where a region that I would like to explore in future, and I'm curious about that. And beyond that, I think I would love to spend a bit more time in Latin America. I was only there like once many years ago through a sport a work trip when I was in the ITF all those years ago, and I feel now that is probably a place I like to go back and spend some more time there, given that also Spanish is a main language in that region.
If we were to go back to this year's Australian Open and understand what a day is like for you during the tournament, there are things that people on the outside would assume that you do during the tournament when it comes to your responsibilities. But what aren't people talking about that you have to do that you are doing during the tournament?
Yes, I mean, I think for those of us that work in events like a Grand Slam or a Olympic Games, or major events that take place in a short period of time, compared to season-long competitions, your basketball seasons, your football seasons, etc. I think the intensity of the days that we go through one another for 25 plus days with hardly any breaks. It's a lot of intensity. So days have a lot of ebbs and flows and ups and downs. But if I was to say, for example, day 2 of the Australian Open, Tuesday, the main draw is underway. We've got about 64 singles matches taking place on those days, and one of the areas that myself and my team get heavily involved, and maybe some peers in the industry may not be aware of or don't know. It's supporting the daily scheduling of the matches, and supporting, from our point of view, our broadcast partners around the world, and try to service to support their preferences, their requests for certain players to play in certain time slots or in certain orders of play, because we've got our great partners at the Nine Network in Australia with a heavy focus, obviously, on the Australian players, but they also want the big stars to play maybe at prime time. Then we've got our friends at ESPN across the Americas, who work with TSN in Canada and Tennis Channel in the US as well. And they have a strong preference to have, obviously, American players, whether it's Canadian, the US, or Latin American players, to play in the daytime, Australian time, because it's the evening and prime time in America. But they also want to have your big stars to play in our afternoon slots, so our viewers across the continent can have a chance to watch your Rafas, your Alcaraz, your Novaks in those windows. And then we've got our European partners, for example, who want their main players to play in our evening or late day matches, because that's where Europe starts to wake up. Whilst the Indian players, the Indian broadcast, the Sony, they want matches to start at least after our second match every day, because that's still about 7 a.m. in India. So that's a big jigsaw puzzle of players' requests. We receive about 300 requests by the end of the tournament from all our broadcast partners, in terms of, we would like Novak versus Fuxovic to play second match of the day, while somebody else wants him to play second match at night, and somebody else would like him to play third match in the afternoon, not before 5 p.m. So it's a very intense process that we do through a lot of team people involved, and we are only one of the stakeholders that participate in this big scheduling piece, because ultimately you have to look after the tournament integrity, look at the players in terms of the rest time and those things, particularly when they're involved in singles and doubles and even mixed doubles. You need to look at, obviously, the ticket holders and what players playing in certain courts, certain stadiums, and many other things. So that's a big part that we do behind the scenes. We spend a lot of hours every day working through this, and somehow successfully sort of churn schedules out, order of play every day, and yeah, it's a big part of what we do. It lasts, realistically, lasts a good 10, 12, 15 days tops, including qualifying, in terms of the complexity. And it's not a soft warm-up, or there is not a long cool down. Once you finish, you finish. And the rest of the year, you'd really do other things. I thought it's an interesting part to think about, because it's very different from having meetings and looking at, watching the content on TV.
It's a total juggling act, and I would think it's almost impossible. Like, you do the best you can with all of your broadcast partners, but to get everyone to agree on something when there are certain people in a certain time zone, there's only so much that you all can do at Tennis Australia. So and then you, like you said, you have to account for the players, make sure they have ample rest. I remember Novak this year, he got the opportunity to play a lot of evening matches. So, which obviously is something that the United States probably appreciated, and others as well. But yeah, that's so fascinating to hear about the inner workings of what it takes to get the right schedule out during the day of a tournament. The way in which, Alfonso, we consume tennis matches on television, what do you think will change in that sector in the next 5 or 10 years? Obviously, some of the graphics might change, but when you think about a tennis viewer, and then let's say in a sport that you're very familiar with, football, i.e. soccer, in the viewer there, what's different about the consumption of those two sports based upon fans and How does tennis broadcasting evolve in the ways in which we consume it?
Yeah, no, great point, Brian. And it's good to get into some of these, nuances, or I guess exciting part of what I personally find exciting to, and yourself as well, working from a commentary point of view and in the industry. I think one of a few of the key things about tennis, right? We have this huge volume of matches that take place simultaneously at the beginning of a tournament. And then obviously as the players are knocked out, then you get into your quarterfinals, semifinals, and that's more straightforward in terms of coverage and consumption, right? But that first stage is particularly in a Grand Slam when we have a whole week with lots and lots of matches from 64. Then we've got doubles, and then you've got mixed doubles coming up. Players that are involved in all three of these draws, like Jessica Pegula this year and Coco Gauff. So we had to schedule them multiple times, and somehow they managed to rest in between. But the consumption of those matches, you've got television, who typically tends to focus on, in a particular market, those players that are of most interest to them, or the big stars as well, right? Play in countries where they don't have local players, which is, for example, a lot of Southeast Asia countries, or across Africa, the Middle East. When they don't have local stars, they focus on the big names, big stars, right? So on television, you have your, typically one match after another match. We're lucky that in a lot of countries we have two linear television channels simultaneously running coverage for probably the first week. So those fans who like to watch on television, they can consume that way. But you can only watch so many matches at the same time on television, right? Because of the simultaneity of the match. Thankfully for us, we have across the world, all our partners nowadays stream all of the matches, all of the courts on their digital platforms. So it'll be on ESPN Plus in the US. They cover every single ball on ESPN Plus. The same with Discovery Plus across all of Europe. Nine now, and Stan in Australia. Wow, Tennis World in Japan, being connected across Southeast Asia. So we're very fortunate that our partners stream all of the matches online. So fans who really want to watch matches that are on television, they can watch on ESPN Plus and have every ball there. I explain this context because unlike, I believe, when you can see soccer leagues or basketball leagues and others, the number of simultaneous matches at any given time is much limited, right?
Sure.
You may have a couple of NBA games going on the same night, but they actually tend to stack them, for the most part. And so fans can focus on that television experience and consume that and enjoy that telecast. So I think that's a difference in terms of the consumption, because we may feel that we have, television viewers is a number, but our digital number watching through streams is quite high as well, which is exciting. And another thing I think useful to remember is the duration of tennis matches. For us, we know we have a start time, or a start order of play, depending on how long the previous match went, and we know we're going to finish. Let alone a Grand Slam where men's matches are 5 sets compared to the rest of the year in the tour. So the duration of matches obviously has impact in terms of viewing experience. So that's also differences with, I think, tennis and most other sports that are, sort of season-based. And I think that from a demographics point of view, we're very lucky that I think tennis is one of the sports where we have a very balanced male and female audience in most countries around the world. In some countries, maybe it's a little bit more male skewed, such as India. The countries like in Australia, we actually have around a 55% female audience watching on television. So we have more women watching tennis than men. And in addition to that, we actually, in Australia, we're very lucky that we have a very strong proposition. So every night of the Australian Open, we are on prime time. We are on the biggest network in Australia, the Nine Network, and we win the ratings every night. I don't think there's anything like it in the world sport. The other Grand Slams, they don't tend to play at night, or at least they're not on a national television free to air, and they certainly don't win the ratings every night. And I think it's a very unique that says a lot about how mad and how big Australian fans are about sport, and how lucky we are to run the Australian Open here and have these fans who have a very strong female audience versus versus other codes that have heavily skewed male audiences.
That was fascinating. Alfonso Medina, head of media rights at Tennis Australia. I'm Bryan Fenley. Alfonso, this was a blast, man. I look forward to chatting soon. And this was so much fun. Thanks so much for allowing us to dive into your mind.
Well, great. Thank you so much for the time, Bryan. That was great to share some of the insights, and look forward to chatting again another time.